Hello, I'm John Dawson. I'm pastor at Abingdon Presbyterian Church in lovely Abingdon, Virginia. I'm also a professor instructor at Graham Bible College. Right now, we do have a bachelor's degree and we have certificates, and our tagline has been training volunteers for Christ, disciples for Christ. We've had many who've gone on from there to be in ministry. What we'd really like to do, though, is help you understand the Bible better for your own Christian life. What I'm teaching right now is geography, and I want to have a very brief video on geography that'll look at Palestine and the major things you need there. There's a lot more, of course, but if you could have these few things, these few cities, this couple of mountains, these few rivers, these three lakes in mind, then you understand the flow of things. We're also going to talk about its topography, which is very unique, actually, in the whole world. So I'd like to begin by sharing this here. This is my little sketch drawing of Palestine. By the way, it's called Palestine because of the Philistines. I think that comes from the Romans when they looked at that. It's also called Canaan. That was the Canaanites who were there. It's called the land of Israel. Politically, of course, now there are areas that are in the Palestinian Authority, and there's areas in the nation of Israel. But we're looking at this land, particularly because of how the Bible is set there, and to understand this, to understand where things are, and understanding the geography and the topography of the land. I want to start by talking about three lakes. There is one lake here. This is called Hula, and I'll pull up a map that'll show, or a note that'll show how that it's Hula. It's just like the hula dance, I think. But this is a very small lake. It's been bigger at different times. I think right now it's have a lot of its waters being pulled out for irrigation. But it follows down, and the next lake is the Sea of Galilee, or also called Tiberias, also called Chinnereth. And they say that in part because it does kind of look like a harp. One could swim across it if you're a very good swimmer. It's ringed with mountains, and it's actually down fairly low. We'll talk about that. The third is the Salt Sea, or the Dead Sea. It's really a lake. All the water that flows into it, and nothing really flows out. And so you have the water coming in and then evaporating, and it is 10 times saltier than the ocean. It's primarily used right now for pulling out different minerals that are there, because it's very laden with minerals. So those three lakes, there's Hula and Galilee and the Dead Sea. We'll look at the rivers. There are, I think, 6 rivers that I've got here. Obviously, there's more, but the main one, the most important, is the River Jordan, which you should know all kind of things about if you've read your Bible or heard this. But the Jordan River will go from Hula down into the Sea of Galilee, and then it winds down the Upper Jordan, Lower Jordan. It goes into the Dead Sea. This is a very low river. It's below sea level, and it gets very far down below sea level. In fact, when it gets down here, the Dead Sea is maybe 1,300 feet below sea level. That's the surface there of the Dead Sea is the lowest place on Earth where you can breathe in air. I suppose you can go down under the ocean, but this is the lowest spot on the surface of the Earth. So we have the Jordan River. There is 4 rivers that divide off to the east. This is called Transjordan often. This is the area to the east of Jordan. The area across the Jordan here to the west was the promised land for Joshua. It's where most of Israel was and settled, although some of the tribes settled over in Transjordan on the eastern side. But let's take a look at these rivers, because they become different places of of division. Let's start up here. This is the Yarmuk. It's at the top. I know it's kind of like a yarmulke. It's not quite the same word, but if you think of the top, it's up here, the Yarmuk. Then you have the Jabbok, which is right in the middle. Then you have the Arnon, which is pretty much from the middle of the Dead Sea. And then you have the Zered at the bottom. These were traditional borders during the Old Testament time. The Edomites were down on this side of the Zered. The Moabites were between the Zered and the Arnon. Some of the Ammonites were here between the Arnon and the Jabbok. The Jabbok and the Yarmuk is this area here is called Gilead, like there's a balm in Gilead. And then above this area is called Bashan. So we have Bashan, Gilead. This is an Ammonite area, and then the Moabites, and then the Edomites. Edomites, Moabites, Ammonites, the land of Gilead, and the land of Bashan. These rivers make the dividing lines, because rivers are very important dividing lines. There's one other river I put here. This is the Kishon River. It's right over here. And this goes into the Jezreel Valley. It's a very lush valley. This was always important for crops and still is. There are two mountains I picked out. The top one here, this is Mount Hermon, a little caret up here. Mount Hermon is over 9,000 feet. It's the highest peak in the area. It's used in scripture symbolically. It's actually a little bit north of where Israel was. Sometimes they would have that area, depends on how much area they were controlling. But there's, for example, in Psalm 133, it talks about the dew of Hermon. It's a snow-capped mountain. People can ski there all the time, or so I'm told, at least if you can ski. We also have this mountain here I've put. This is, I had to get something off there. This is Mount Carmel. If you remember Elijah and the prophets of Baal, it's right here, and it goes right down to the sea. This area is now the area of Haifa, but this is Mount Carmel. There's other mountains. Of course, you think, what about Mount Zion in Jerusalem? Yes, Jerusalem, there's mountains all through here. They're higher up there, and they get lower down here, but we'll talk about those in a moment. So we've got lakes, Hula, Galilee, Dead Sea. We've got rivers, the Jordan River, the Yarmuk, the Jabbok, the Arnon, and the Zered, and we added the Kishon up here, and the mountains, Mount Hermon and Mount Carmel. I want to look at just a few cities. Obviously, there's a lot. Take some foreign cities. These are still cities. This here is Damascus. It's above, in fact, if you go straight across, this is where we have Tyre and Sidon. Sidon is here, and Tyre. Damascus, by the way, is an early place where the Christians were, very much. Tyre and Sidon, these are the area where the Phoenicians were. If you come down further, this is the area where the Philistines were. And I put one city here, I put Ashdod, partly because Ashdod is still probably the major port for Israel. And then the city that we're most familiar with, perhaps, is the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem's still a city. It's a very interesting and ancient city. If you go into the ancient city, while they do have certain carts that go around, you walk everywhere. It's very small. It's also divided into 4 different quarters. We have the Islamic quarter, the Muslim quarter, you have the Jewish quarter, you have the Christian quarter, and you have the Armenian quarter, which is its own interesting place. So Damascus and Sidon and Tyre, Ashdod, if you want to remember that one, Jerusalem. 2 more cities, and they aren't significant so much because they were large cities, but they've become symbolic. We have Dan, which is up here in the north, and Beersheba down here in the south. They would use the expression all of Israel from Dan to Beersheba. So if you've heard that in the Bible, this is just talking about this is the area where the people were in Israel. Down below this, it's called the Negev, the southern area. It begins very arid over there. So these are your cities, this rivers, lakes. Of course, this over here is the Mediterranean. I do want to try something else to talk about the way that the geography is. I'm going to use, let's see if I can go to, I wonder if I can do this here. Well, this area here, okay, I need to use the pen. Okay, we're not going to do that. We're going to have to go to, I may have to look at something else. Hang on. I'm going to stop this share. And I'm going to try to share a different one. Maybe this one. Is that the one I just had? Let's just see. Yep, that's the one I just had. Stop that share. I'm on a learning curve. Let's try this one. And, oh, I guess I can't use my pen very well. I'll use the cursor. This area along the coast is a fairly flat, very fertile area. And I'll show you some pictures of what things look like around here. So the coastal plains, this is one, there's 4 stripes we have. The coastal plains, you come to the next area, and through here you have these hills, these uplands. Further up here, they're taller, and then further down here, they're not as tall, but there's still quite a climb when you're going from the coast, and then you go through the plains, and then you come up the mountains. So this is the second area. You've got plains, you've got mountains or hills. The third area, you come down to this river, the Jordan River. This is very low. This is actually part of the Rift Valley that goes all the way down into Africa. There's tectonic plates that meet here. And that makes a lot of sense because when we read about destruction of some cities by earthquakes down here along this area, what do you have? When you have 2 tectonic plates near each other and they move, you get earthquakes, as they find in Southern California and other places. So this is very, very low. And then as you move to the east, this 4th area is more arid, but it's also begins to rise in its elevation. We'll stop sharing this, and I want to just show a couple of pictures taken recently. Let's see, we need all of the pictures. And there we go. First, along the coast, and I took these just in the bus as we were traveling. See how flat this is? And you might think, well, no, what's growing out there? I don't know if you can tell all of the white dots. I don't know if you've ever seen cotton in the field, but this is, they're growing cotton here. A lot of things will be growing. There'll be olive groves. I think the next one I have is actually some olive groves. And it's this one here. Yeah, these may be olive groves in through here. But there's all kinds of things that are growing. They've got bananas growing. They've got fruit growing. And you'll note it's fairly flat and very green. Here you see the cover of my camera reflecting off as we just kind of drove through. I wanted to get sort of a feel of how that is. Now that was the coastal area, and it's flat and it's lush. The next area, I've only really got one picture of it. This is where Jerusalem is. You climb up, and it's quite a climb when you're climbing. We come to this one here. Note the trees. It's different. It's a little more rocky, and we were just really climbing up. And I thought, well, I'll just take a picture here as we're going. This doesn't look all that different from where I live in the mountains, although the trees are a little bit different, but you get the general idea. Once you get past this ridge, the middle hills and mountains, and you head east towards the Jordan, you begin to go downhill a lot. And once you reach a certain point, it becomes very arid. In fact, you saw all the green that was on the coast and even the green in the mountains. Let's take just a couple of look at the pictures as we get closer to the Jordan River. This out here is, I think, the Jordan River, or actually could be the top of the Dead Sea at this point. I'm not even sure what these are. They look like burial mounds. But you can also tell, while we did have, this was an oasis, there was a palm tree up here, but it's just not very green anywhere through here. They have some things that are being irrigated down there because of the oasis, but it's just not very green. And if you look across, remember I said at the other side, it's fairly arid, but the mountains go up. Those are the mountains going up on the other side. So it goes down, down, down into the valley. We'll stop sharing that. Let's take a look at some of what it looks like when you get down on the other side of Jerusalem. And this is actually taken from Masada. Can you see? Well, there's a little bit of green there, perhaps, but it could almost be the moon or Mars here. It is just so arid. There are people who live there. There are Bedouins that still live there. They got their flocks of goats. They have little areas of springs that'll come up, and that's where they'll live and move where they are. But this is taken from Masada. I didn't mention where Masada is on a map. I can show you that. But this was Herod's getaway palace / nobody can come near me because he was paranoid. It was also a place where the Jews made their last stand against Rome. And that's another story we'll leave for another time. A couple more pictures. We just have a couple pictures, so we might as well use them. This is a picture of yours truly from the top of Masada looking out. If you can see, it's very hazy because there's a lot of these chemicals are in the air. I'm told you can't get a sunburn by the Dead Sea because of all of the bromium and other things that's up there, the bromides. This is the Dead Sea off over there. And there are little bits where there is some water, that you do have some springs, and there's a little bit growing, but very little. Let's see. The sharing has stopped. Oh, good. We've stopped the sharing. Let's pull up something else we've got here. We've got that one, that one, that one. Let's share one more. This is at a spring, and this is at an oasis. We actually stopped here. We swam in the water out there in the Dead Sea. You're not supposed to get any in your eyes or it'll ruin your eyes. The magnesium content is extraordinarily high, but this becomes a resort area. And the reason that they can build this is because tourists come. Plus, this is an area where there's a spring. And so you have a spring, you have an oasis. That's how this works. You see some of the trees here, and that's always been that way. Okay, stop the share, and we'll do one more thing to share, and that is just these written out if you'd like to see them. The cities I'd mentioned, remember Damascus, Sidon and Tyre, Ashdod on the coast. Those are 3 on the coast. Jerusalem, Dan, and Beersheba, right? From Dan to Beersheba. There's also the mountains, Mount Hermon being the tall one. I mentioned Mount Carmel just because I like it. The lakes, Hula, not much in the Bible about it, but it's there. Galilee, a lot in the Bible about it. And the Dead Sea, which becomes very important. And then the rivers, the Jordan River, the Yarmuk, remember going off to the east at the top of the Jordan below Galilee. The Jabbok, about in the middle before it gets to the Dead Sea. Arnon, kind of in the middle of the Dead Sea. And then the Zered further down. And then in the Jezreel Valley, Kishon, up by Mount Carmel. Well, there's a brief overview. You might want to take a look at this. If you can root these things in your mind, you have a good understanding of Palestine, Canaan, the land of Israel, that place that the Bible talks about a lot. Anyway, I hope you have a good day, and maybe we'll see you at a different time.